Hi guys.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Good.
All right,
Welcome,
we've
everyone.
got yeah, I think so. We've got a doc at the moment. I'm just going to post it in the chat and also in the Slack panels docs. If anybody's got any thoughts or questions as we're going along, then maybe pop them into the docs, the Google Docs, and we can. If we don't have immediate answers, then we can follow up. We haven't got much of an agenda today. It was more, I personally was trying to get something to show. I may try and show a live demo or something, but I'm not brave enough. We'll see if we haven't got anything.
You know, I'm really bad about putting people on the spot and giving them no heads up beforehand, James, don't you?
I've learned from the best, Rob.
I thought a good topic of discussion actually would be for Ian to give us a summary of the latest BDD test, because they're pretty awesome actually.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, on the spot. No warning whatsoever. Totally on the fly. No safety net. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much what those tests are really for, really. A safety net. So there were a few things about like the existing tests which were kind of like I found hard to kind of work with. Like one of the things was the vendoring, like the vendoring of the dependencies actually for the harness itself was kind of hard to work with in terms of trying to fit, because we're sort of dog fooding and we're using a bunch of the commands from within JX itself in the harness in order to like pipe the logs and this kind of thing. Yeah, so someone's dog is not happy about this at all. Yeah, so yeah, they were kind of out of lockstep with the actual main project itself. So one of the things I wanted to do was like vendor the dependencies in a way so that they matched basically whatever was in like currently in master in the actual JX project itself, and then use those dependencies, use those methods actually in the test harness. The other thing that I think is like a big thing and will probably become even bigger as we add, more and more tests is the whole sort of parallel execution of the test suite, because running that many sort of quick starts sequentially just takes forever to run, basically. So I kind of got around that before with the old test harness by kind of rolling in parallel, which is like a little binary that you can use to execute, but you don't really get any control over streaming output of logs or like all of the log output will be interleaved, so you'll see kind of the output on sort of 8 different things all at the same time. Really difficult for debugging, all that kind of stuff. So switched over to Jinko. Jinko basically handles the whole sort of parallelism, it's hard to say, thing by effectively compiling. It kind of splits up the tests at runtime and then kind of compiles them into their own binaries and then executes them, from like a sort of centralized place, using like a sort of status server that gets spun up as well to actually record like the output. And that gives you lots of like cool options, like, only output the log if the test actually fails. So you're not just seeing, reams and reams of sort of logs for things that are just passing normally. You only actually see the log output if that execution comes back as failure. They have like internally inside the library, there's a thing called gexec, which is basically just a wrapper around exec that enables you to kind of control execution from external commands. and also write expectations specifically against those commands. So you can say, you know, like I'm expecting this process signal, or I want to wait this long specifically before failing this test, or whatever. So there's kind of a lot more control, especially for sort of our use case where we're just looking to sort of execute, you know, sort of binaries and stuff. It does work pretty.
And you've also added something in to generate that living documentation, which then we're going to publish onto the website as well.
Yeah, so I mean, the other thing that's quite cool is there's they have a sort of an abstraction called like a reporter, and obviously like the basic default test suite, you know, has a default reporter, but you can write your own as well, and then you can kind of make it do, you know, whatever you want. Another really cool thing about that is that they have hooks that enable you to synchronize all of your parallel tests into one thing at the end when you're finished. So, you know, you can you're executing your tests across like 8 different nodes, 8 different tests running sequentially, but it will basically wait for everything to finish, compile the results, and then you've got access to this sort of reporter struct that enables you to create whatever you want. So, I mean, but under the hood, it's a little bit fiddly. So what I'm actually doing is basically marshalling every node's sort of test results into sort of JSON, writing that out to the file system, and then reading those all back in, compiling it together, and then writing it out again as HTML. But, you know, you could conceivably output, you know, JSON output if you wanted to sort of, you know, like database reporting or whatever format you want, really. And I've just hooked that up with JX docs. So, you know, it just spits out, it's actually an MD file, but that accepts, you know, valid HTML as well. So it's just got, you know, sort of the time that build completed, and then sort of programmatic listing of all of the sort of top level description blocks. So, you know, you're describing JX quick start, whatever, or you're just describing a certain feature. It's just going to output all of those into that. I had to break out my slightly rusty, I have to say, CSS skills to actually update the style sheet for the docs. So hopefully it's okay. I mean, it's pretty sort of neat and tidy and stuff, and I've just added in like a little SVG tick or cross depending on if the suite passes or fails. And I updated this morning as well, just to say that basically anything that we mark as pending, although that will come back as pending in the actual test suite run, in the doc, it will just come back and say that that's a failure, which I guess is, I mean, I could amend it so that it just says that it's pending in the report as well, but I kind of figure that's a good way of sort of encouraging us to complete our pending specs.
Well, while you're talking, would you mind if I shared my screen so I could show people where this project is? But even though I put it in the chat, because this is recorded, if someone's looking at the recording, they won't have the recording of the chat. I don't believe. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Yeah. So I posted the link to the project. It's under the Jenkins X organization. I posted that in chat. But if you're watching this in a recording, you won't have access to the chat. So just share my screen. I can do that just so people can see where it actually is. Opening. Taking a long time. No, I cancelled that. It's taking too long. Anyway, the name of the project is BDD-JX.
Yeah, BDD-JX. It should be a lot easier as well if anyone, you know, sort of looking to get involved in the project wants to run the tests locally and stuff. There's really only kind of like one thing that you need to kind of have set, which is just your Git organization, basically your Git username in an environment variable. And at the start of all of the test runs, it will actually spit out a little thing saying what you've got that set to and what you need to set. So the sort of intention is there, I guess, to sort of encourage people to kind of, try it for themselves and report things if they've got problems, or, just generally kind of help with the sort of contribution of getting things really sort of solid and working really nicely.
So we're going to run these tests every time we do a change to the platform?
Yeah, so I think they run on every PR now, which is really cool. It's just especially running in parallel, I think we're going to run into some kind of underlying issues that maybe we wouldn't have run into before, which is why I was thinking about the whole, mitigations for merge conflicts, which I think went in this morning. I think James, Lionel Messi James, merged that this morning. So that's my unofficial name for, in order to differentiate the two Jameses. With Lionel Messi James and other James. I just probably need a better thing than other James. He's
Ronaldo James?
Ronaldo James, yeah. It's a fight to the death for the Ballon d'Or.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much where it's at. I mean, it's so just to, for anyone that wasn't in our sort of conversation this morning, basically sometimes the issue can be if you kick off a bunch of different, sort of app creations at the same time, you can get merge conflicts into the requirements YAML, because all of the PRs are hitting at the same time, and basically it's the same 3 lines that it's trying to write against. It doesn't know what to do. You get conflict. So a mitigation for that is basically to reorder the requirements by name. The intention being that the insertions will come at different line numbers, and therefore we won't get as many conflicts. So it's definitely possible to still create conflicts. I don't think there's any way around that. And there's some really nice code that does rebasing and that seems to work really well. So it's just like an extra kind of little added addition on top of that, really, to try and make it even more kind of smart about how it does it.
And just to I guess summarize with that, it's been great because you found some great bugs that we just wouldn't have been exposed to. So having those being run automatically on every pull request has been superb, and then the parallelism as well, because that's what people are going to be wanting to do, parallel builds, right? So
that's the thing. I think it's really cool. I mean, there's so much. I mean, that's the thing. It is such a complex system, and so it handles so much for you already. That it's kind of inevitable that there are going to be these edge cases and there are going to be these little things. So, I mean, the intention is just to try and sort of close those gaps, and in particular make it really, really easy for people to get started. Because I think, if you can kind of get beyond, if you don't have any kind of technical issues in that very first kind of, sort of starting up process, then the main sort of feeling you get from looking at the project is kind of like, wow, this is kind of amazing. It's doing all this stuff for me, which, if you're kind of really excited about it, you come to it and the first thing you see is some sort of error or you get blocked in some way, kind of a bit deflating. So, it's really just kind of exposing people to the awesomeness of Jenkins X without teething trouble.
Awesome. I wonder if we could get, it's awesome. I wonder if we could get the BDD test to label the quick starts if they don't work. And then we could filter them out from the JX quick start command. So anything we know doesn't work, we could just hide it basically from the JX quick start command.
Like automatic. That would be really cool.
If you, it's a bit of a rubbish filter, but if you put a prefix of WIP, then it does that right now. But we could come up with something better.
Yeah, like maybe we could just label the GitHub repository or something. I'm not sure if there's an API to do that, but something like that would be awesome if we had some way of, or just some canonical place we could say these don't work, or we could.
Yeah, it'd be even nice then to also have maybe an option on the CLI to actually then to include the betas or the other quick starts, so that you can actually select them if you choose. But we only offer out of the box the stable ones.
I think that's like the key to it as well, is to really, there's obviously a bunch of domain-specific experts, like we were talking about Elixir this morning. Haven't had an enormous amount of exposure to Elixir myself. I think it's really cool, but I've only just sort of played around with it. There are probably people using it in, sort of very kind of, production-grade Elixir sort of environments that have got a bunch of best practices about how to bootstrap an Elixir app, and encouraging contributions so that we can, we can kind of use best, sort of in that specific domain, we can use like the best practices for this specific thing without having to be kind of experts in everything ourselves, and making it really easy for people to contribute in that way. I think that would be really awesome, and we'll get like a much broader range, and the quality will probably be a bit higher than if we're each of us trying to figure out, like how on earth what is the best practices for an Elixir project? Without looking at it specifically, I wouldn't know. I'm just like, oh, Go works, that's great, But, yeah, I think
ultimately what would be good longer term is these quick starts actually, rather than just a basic page of hello world, it'd be nice to actually offer some links to training or various information so that people can try out different languages, have their automated CI/CD pipeline set up.
Yeah, that's it.
And then kind of maybe links to wizards or something, how they can start building on top. It's also like a training involving new languages.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. It is so easy to, for instance, Rust. I've played around with Rust a little bit, but we've got a great quick start for Rust. It's like, boom, there you go. You've got a Rust app up and running. It's live. You can query it. You can play around with it. You can put it in, put it through that whole process straight away. And it's, it's very difficult to, I can't really think of any other way of getting from sort of nothing to, this is being delivered in various environments. You've got previews, you've got everything.
And you get all these centralized logs, centralized metrics and everything as well, which is all out of the box.
So yeah, a really good forum for, for extending skill bases as well. If you've got other things that you want to, play around with, we've got a quick start for it. It's a great way to get involved in that too.
And people can contribute, because I think a lot of those quick starts, people have been contributing. If people do have a quick start, then we can just fork that into the repo, and we can tie that into our automated tests. So that's kind of another way that if people from an organization or from their team, they have can put together a boilerplate quick start that uses the same typical way they package or build their applications. If we have a quick start, then that gets tied into our BDD tests that get run on every single PR.
Yeah, that would be an amazing way of involving the community as well. Yeah.
Awesome, nice. Thanks, Ian.
No worries.
I was going to say, so there's some other people, some other folks have been doing some interesting things. I know James has been loving the time that he's been spending with EKS, but we've always got an EKS, right?
Yeah, Amazon is awesome. Yeah, I've definitely been spoiled using GKE, which is so easy to get stuff done, and Amazon's powerful but different, and yeah, slightly harder to use. But yeah, we've got EKS is just about working. I haven't really blogged about it yet because it's not 100%. We've got JX. Let me show you the CLI. Let me try sharing my screen. Yeah, I'll keep talking in that.
Oh, that's all there. It was taking me ages trying to share my screen before.
Yeah.
Let me try. Did that work?
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone.
I can see it.
I'll turn off my video just in case that helps. My internet isn't that good. So we have a command line now for JX create cluster AKS to the create cluster. There we go. create cluster. And we have an EKS command. Yay! And this actually works. And under the covers, it's using EKS CTL from the Weave folks, CLI. Because it turns out, even though EKS is a thing, making an EKS cluster is still really quite hard. And so if you use this, so basically create cluster EKS, downloads EKS CTL if you haven't already downloaded it, and that installs it in your path and all that kind of stuff. Then it uses that to spin up the EKS cluster. Then it installs Jenkins X on top. And it's surprisingly complicated to create an EKS cluster. There's all kinds of different things. There's a VPC, there's a service role, there's a node policy thing, and anyways, a node pool, and then you create the EKS cluster. So there's all kinds of different Amazon resources that all appear in CloudFormation. So another covers EKS CTL is using CloudFormation, which is kind of cool. So it's kind of working. And by the way, it uses ECR by default. So I've switched Amazon and EKS providers to use ECR by default, Elastic Container Registry, which is cool. The one weird thing is whenever you create a project on Amazon, you can't just push to an arbitrary Docker image to ECR. You have to create an ECR registry, repository, I think it's called, for every Docker name you make. So whenever you do JX import or JX create Spring or JX create quick start, I've hacked that if your cluster is, if you're using ECR as your Docker registry, then we do the AWS create ECR thingy. So we kind of try and hide the manual stuff you have to do with Amazon a bit. So right now, if you use Amazon with COPS or EKS, it uses ECR, which is cool. So we don't need to use the local Docker daemon or mess around with insecure Docker registries, all that kind of rubbish. So that's kind of nice. The only thing that's missing, which I've been fighting with now for a few days, is by default, when you install Jenkins X, we install an ingress, and then we find the host name of the ingress, and we use a load balancer, like a single load balancer for the cluster. And then we generate ingresses to all the different services and all the different namespaces using that ingress controller. The current issue, I'll stop sharing my screen now actually and put video on instead. The only issue is when you're using ELB, Amazon's Elastic Load Balancer, there's no single canonical IP address. Each zone gets its own IP address internally, so there's 3 IP addresses, and those IP addresses change all the time, every day. So once you've created your cluster, the next day it disappears again, which is not brilliant. So you can manually set up Route 53 yourself by hand, but that's kind of painful. So I'm just hacking Expose Controller so that we can use path-based. In fact, let me share my screen again. I've just thought of another, a kind of half demo. Let me put my screen back and hide Rob's face. If I open a window, I'm using an Amazon account right now, an Amazon cluster, JXCTX. Yeah, I'm using a COPS cluster right this second. So this is COPS. If I do JX open, oh, where did my window go? There we go. JX open. Notice the path-based DNS, path-based ingress. So we're using a single domain, and then we're using paths afterwards. So now we're using paths. It means rather than using the IP address, we could use the ELB hostname. The only problem is using path-based breaks everything. So if I open Nexus, Nexus doesn't work. And you can't log into Jenkins because Jenkins doesn't know it's at this path. So now I need to go through all of our charts and inject the path into all the charts. Oh, it's horrible. But yes, which is really unfortunate, but I can't really see another way forward. I don't think you can.
work. Well, somebody else was going to say something, but
sorry, I was going to jump in on the whole path thing. You know, you're using an ingress controller already, right? Which is basically just Nginx.
Yes.
So, not that it's going to be like unicorns and rainbows, but you could potentially map paths using Nginx at ingress to domains, like subdomains.
Is there a way of hiding the path to the?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You basically rewrite all of. You have a bunch of rewrite rules, and you read the path.
How do you do that? That's awesome.
You've got to. We do it for Monocular at the moment.
Yeah. So.
Oh crap!
Because it's just Nginx. If we come up with some sort of fancy custom Nginx config for the ingress, then we could potentially rewrite all of the paths just into subdomains, and then you wouldn't have to, just kind of handle it there rather than getting involved in rewriting a bunch of stuff internally,
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds awesome. Thank you.
I'll just drop this into the public Slack channel a second, but we do something similar for Monocular to rewrite, because we've got two backend services in Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So we add annotations onto the service, and then Exposure Controller generates the ingress rule with those Nginx rewrite annotation.
Oh, yes, that's awesome. Okay, I'm going to try that. As soon as this call's finished, I'm going to try it. Because I was scared by having to go around and fix every application that's broken. Oh, that sounds a much better idea. Thank you, Ian. That's awesome. I owe you lots of beers. I'll try that after this call. That's brilliant. So yes, so Amazon's close. Like EKS and COPS is close to being awesome. So we can switch back to using the ELB hostname for Amazon once this path stuff works, which would be awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. Is there any questions, or anybody got anything more? I can give an update of what I've been messing around with, but maybe that's not very interesting compared to somebody else.
I was just going to mention one other thing. I finally documented how to change the configuration of Jenkins X. I posted it in the Slack. I posted it on the chat room earlier today. But the other thing is we've now got, you can specify the Docker registry now as you're installing via -- Docker registry, which we document on there. So just if you don't want to do the my values dance, you can specify on the command line as well. And GCR should work. There's just an IAM thing we need to figure out to let the build pods push to GCR. I haven't figured out the magic yet to get that to work, but hopefully that should be fairly straightforward, and then we can automate that in JX install or JX cluster on GKE. Because it'd be nice to always use GCR by default on Google. Really.
I wonder if the Scaffold folks might know something about that. You'd hope that Scaffold push into GCR.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah.
Nice.
Before you say anything, so just I'm just chasing down a very trivial but it's trivial bug which has caused me a bit of heartache today. That's Helm. When you do, so I've been using an old version of Helm. I've been using with 2.8.x, and we're now on 2.9.1. The JX version, when you print that out, it just tells you the client and the server are both the same version, which is clearly wrong. I've only just discovered. So I'm going to try and find out why that is happening. But it does mean if your client and your server are different versions, then your builds will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should make JX install or JX create cluster check the version of Helm. And
also maybe upgrade JX upgrade platform.
Yeah.
Because when we update a new version, we want to tell people to kind of update their client.
Yeah.
Or automate.
Yeah, probably want that inject status as well. You know, if they've got problems, just to say, oh, actually, your versions aren't aligned. Because I think this is quite a few people, doesn't it, from time to time.
Yeah, I was hoping Helm 3 would just be a thing when none of this matters anymore, but yeah, it's not really going to be a thing for a while. Yeah, we should fix it.
Sorry, James. On you go.
Is anybody really interested in what I've been doing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There we are.
Share the pain. So I did a little thing of the one of the things we've struggled with in the past is our ingress rules. So if you need to change the domain, for example, out of the box we create a cluster and we default to nip.io. Now, if you want to change to a real domain, it's kind of quite tricky to be able to start having to do this. Quite a number of things you have to change. So you have to delete your ingress rules. You then have to update the configuration for exposed controller. You have to remove annotations from the service so that the external URL is updated. And there's also one of the other things we wanted to do for ages is enable Cert Manager so that you can turn on HTTPS and TLS so you can get automated signed certificates generated for your ingress rules. It's pretty much all done. I've been testing. I've just caught a couple of bugs, which I'm just adding some tests in. I've said it for the last 3 days. I'm that close, but I really feel it is. I'm not going to sleep tonight, or there's going to be a bit of wine that'll help me tonight, and I'm sure that'll fix it. But then once that's done, then it is going to be fully focused on trying to get Prow in and tie up to the work that Gareth's been doing around multi-cluster Terraform.
But now the World Cup is finished, I'm pretty confident we'll get back to full speed again.
What World Cup? I've no idea what you're talking about.
I can't. Is that the football?
I'm just focused on the Euros, really. They're going to be awesome. Just 2 years to go. It's going to be brilliant.
You're going to start watching cricket.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a bad idea.
Cool. Was there any questions anybody has, or any other updates people wanted to give? No. Okay. Go on, Rob. You look like you were about to say something.
Yeah.
Should we call it a day?
Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, great.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. See you soon.